Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown.
Today is what, the 29th of, tomorrow is the end of the month, end of a quarter. Or Downtown Improvement District board meeting. The agenda is, and information has been sent to all of us. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it, but looks like we have a quorum and we can begin the meeting. So we call it to order. First is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was July 20th. Hopefully people have read the minutes, and I would take a motion to approve unless there's any changes. Okay, and a second? Okay, all right, thank you, Andrew. Any changes anybody sees or knows, hears about? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye, and opposed, the same. Thank you. All right, next is the June 30, which is the year-end preliminary. Tricia's going to go through those, and then the August statement. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Your statements as of June 30 are the first set of statements in the packet. These are still marked as preliminary as we're still in the middle of our audit, and I can't count anything final until the auditor has given their blessing. At this point, I really doubt that there would be any changes to these statements. So you can see, if you look at Statement A, our district-wide fund ended with about $74,000 in fund balance, and the snow melt fund about $586,000 in fund balance. Throughout the year, if you look at Statement B down at the bottom, You can see our district-wide fund, we plan to spend about $141,000 of fund balance, and we actually ended up depleting our fund balance by just about $64,000. So we came in a little ahead of the game on that, which is great, a little under on the snow melt fund, but that's okay because we've got that big reserve there, so we're looking good. Statement C are all of the payments that happened since the last meeting. I would look for approval for Statement C if I don't have any questions.
Yeah, we did come in under budget on the district-wide, which is good. Snow melt was a little over, but looks like we had a lot of repairs, which are always hard to predict when and if, but kind of ate up that. But it's nice that we have still have a lot of surplus in the snow melt fund, so.
Correct.
You got any observations on them? No. Melvin, you all set? Okay. I was also happy that our revenue came in pretty close to budget.
Yes.
So we estimated that, the discount and so forth pretty well. Though we did have a loss on the investment portfolio, which means that the city probably lost a lot of money on the investment portfolio, because we just get allocated a piece of it.
It's called the mark-to-market entry that we have to do, where we bring all of the city's investments to the market value at 6:30. So if the market has a great day on 7/1,
It doesn't,
we don't get to
mean
count
we,
that.
we didn't realize the losses, it's just a
Absolutely,
mark-to-market.
absolutely.
Nothing's been sold, if I understand the city's portfolio, so.
Point in time.
All right, we need approval. Yes, we need a motion. Well, you want to go through August and?
I can do that,
And then
sure.
we'll do both, accept both of them?
Sure. Yep. Then the next set of your statements is the first 2 months of this fiscal year. It doesn't look like too much has happened on the statements because the bills didn't go out until September for the assessment. So there is a note in the memo there that so far we've collected about $480,000 of the assessments and still have just over $600,000 left to collect. So that is happening now as we speak, and your statements will reflect that at the next meeting. Again, just not much activity since the year has just started. All your expenditures are on Statement C for this one too, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
My only question is, I don't think we can spend below our fund balance. So do we need to do anything to authorize some kind of a short-term fund?
No, you did not spend below your fund balance. You still had about $11,000.
But what about in September? Will we get?
The collections started coming in.
So they will come in and say, okay.
We already
I
have
thought the
almost,
bills went out in September.
yeah.
Okay.
They did. We've collected as
So we don't have to.
We're
do anything
close to
recover.
$500,000
Okay.
in collections so far this month. So
It's the only
it was
question
very
I-
tight, but we're okay.
We made it, good. All right. All right, we need, any questions, Trish, on the financials, either the preliminary year end or August, which is just 1 month into it, but we need a motion to approve the June 30 year end preliminary financial statements, and then the August, well, do we approve the statements or the expenditures?
The expenditures.
So Schedule C.
Correct.
Right, for both the last quarter and then the month of August. Need a motion for that? All right, and a second?
Second.
Okay, good. Any other questions on, or comments on them? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the expenditures per Schedule C for period ending June and then August, say aye. Aye. Aye, and opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Melvin, are you,
It's me.
you're up next, huh?
That's right. James, is this good, or do you want me to have a microphone?
Mic up there,
I can go up there, that's fine.
sorry.
It's cool. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I'm here today to talk about the resident proposal that has come out of the DID Resident Working Group. I don't know why I got that. I don't have a presentation. So, as you recall, we worked during the last reauth period to add a residential assessment to the operations of the DID. Once that was approved by City Commission, Kenzie Channing and I, the manager of neighborhood experience here at DGRI, formed a resident subcommittee to figure out what resident priorities were and are, and basically use those funds generated to kind of tackle some of those issues. And so we met pretty hot and heavy for a couple months. We met every other week with the resident group. It was great. We got some lunches out of it, so that was fun. But ultimately, what kind of boiled up to the top was that residents were kind of concerned about two primary things. For their neighborhood, they were really concerned about safety, as many of us are about our downtown and our neighborhood at home, wherever that might be. And the other piece that I thought was very interesting that came up was the residents were also surprised and maybe a little concerned about the presence of the ambassador program and the fact that many of the residents have lived down here for a long time, and some of their neighbors who are not as involved in DGRI don't seem to really know about them. And so the neighbors kind of looked for an opportunity to sort of take on both of those things with one proposal. And I believe the proposal's in your packet. And so basically what the residents and Kenzie and I worked up was a proposal to take the resident funds generated by the assessment in addition to the $50,000 grant that we provided to the residents as well, to basically create 2 new ambassador positions for the Downtown Ambassador Program that would focus really heavily on kind of a couple different things. Those being increasing the visibility of the ambassador program sort of through downtown during what we see as sort of peak resident hours. So we kind of used some anecdotal information that we got from residents. When are they out? What are they doing? And then also looked at some of our tools like Placer AI to understand when are we seeing resident activity sort of peak, and how does that look differently than sort of tourist activity and visitors into downtown. So they would kind of be around patrolling downtown during those times and sort of in specific areas. So really hitting sort of Monroe Center, near Plaza Towers, Bridge Street, near River House, really focusing in on providing just an increased presence in those areas where we see a lot of residents living and kind of moving back and forth in downtown. And then also look for an opportunity to take these 2 ambassadors and be able to put them front and center in front of residents and be able to pitch the program, help raise awareness about the ambassadors and the services that they provide, not only to the visitors that come downtown, but to the residents as well, in an attempt to, I can move, it's cool, in an attempt to raise awareness of the program and the services that residents should and could be taking advantage of. And so that's sort of the proposal that we have laid out for you here, and we aim to do that in a variety of ways. And the thing I told the resident working group that I'll tell all of you too is a couple of things. Is one, this is a pilot program, and so we're going to be looking for opportunities to know that it's successful. One of the ways that we're going to do that is we've put together a sort of preliminary survey that's going to go out to all the residents to help us, DGRI, understand what residents know already or don't know about the ambassador program and sort of their perception overall of safety of their neighborhood. And then we'll be able to sort of follow that up, or follow up, puts that survey back out at the end of this sort of pilot program and look at how perceptions of the ambassador program and safety in downtown has changed. And then the other piece that I sort of hammered home with the resident working group as well is that this is sort of a pilot, so these things can change, and they can sort of change on the fly. If we are noticing that these ambassadors might be more useful on different days or different times of the week, or have different responsibilities that we think might lend themselves to be more beneficial to the resident community downtown, then we can certainly and quickly pivot them to do those things. I think that's all the highlights. I will just say really quick, there are members of the resident working group here, so thanks Hal and Kathy and Amy for coming and supporting this endeavor and all your work for the subcommittee. And with that, I'll take any questions that we might have. Bob, I'll pitch to you.
This summary is a pretty good summary of what, the increased scope of what we're going to do. The only question I had is, we're going to be in those areas, but what, is it just their presence that's all needed, or will they be talking with people that maybe are shouldn't be there, or seem to be loitering or sleeping or need to be moved around?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll just add that these ambassadors will probably have a little bit of responsibility beyond what the traditional ambassadors do. So it'll be a lot more engagement with just anybody who's in the area, continuing to add that uniform presence, and really look to just to provide an element of safety to those places. And so, yeah, if we notice that folks are starting to bed down for the night, we want these ambassadors to do their best to intervene and try to direct that activity somewhere else.
So does that, maybe that assumes, maybe not, that they might be trained a little differently than a typical ambassador?
Yeah, so I think we do a pretty good job of training the current ambassadors. I think what's really important for us is these positions, because they're a little bit different, we need to start out with probably candidates that are just a little bit different than what our typical ambassador is. So I'm working really tightly with Rebecca to make sure that we get the right two folks in on the ground floor, people that are going to be highly engaging, folks that are going to be very energetic, that are going to get out there and want to be able to literally hit the ground walking very fast, so that we can get these ambassadors out and sort of doing some of that activity. So we want them to engage with the homeless population. We want them to engage with the homeless outreach team quite a bit. We want them to have just a very visible presence in downtown, more so than what we already have. So hopefully that answers your question.
Will it be,
Question.
yeah, I think it would be advisable if you could to give us some kind of an update as we get into this
Yeah,
after
absolutely.
3 months, 6 months, and
Yeah.
whether it's from you or from, the people on the street, but it would be nice to, what's working, what isn't, what can we do better, how do we improve on it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is a pilot program.
Right.
We got to make sure it works and figure out what we do going forward.
Yeah. I think Peter has a question.
Yeah, well, along those lines, is there any protocol for the safety of these people, these new ambassadors?
Yeah, so the ambassadors are trained pretty well on how to maintain their own personal safety. I kind of envision these working a little bit different than traditional ambassadors. So traditional ambassadors typically work independently of each other. So if you and I are ambassadors, I might be on this block and you might be on that block. We're sort of looking at these ambassadors might actually work together and be able to just increase presence that way. So having two ambassadors work together and sort of address some of these sort of concerns that we might have, it might be more beneficial to have these two folks work together side by side versus having them be split up and working different parts of the district.
I was thinking more on the lines of immediate support or relief if something physical should happen to one of them.
Oh, sure. I mean, they have the rest of the team will be out, of course, the other ambassadors working. The police department, the homeless outreach team, they're all available to our ambassadors as well.
How did the selection of this resident working group happen, and then how many people participated in the process?
The selection of the program, so we put out a pretty wide blanket call to all residents of the downtown. And so we just kind of picked folks that were expressed an interest in sort of safety, ambassadors, sort of that kind of realm. And Kenzie and I worked really closely to make sure that we picked what we felt was like a pretty broad spectrum of folks. So we have, lots of folks from Plaza, lots of folks from River House. We also have some folks from like South Division, things like that. So we want to make sure we got a really good like whole neighborhood focus on the panel. And I think we had about 10 people, is that right, Kenzie, sitting around the table? Yeah, eight.
And then when we send the survey out that we're talking about, is that going to be enough? I mean, I don't know how many responses we get, because it's probably hard to get accurate emails and all that stuff. Is there a way that we can say this is somehow measured where people are at, and then if we said 6 months from now as this pilot progresses, if folks are seeing the benefit? Because that's great for our own purposes as we go for the next reauthorization,
Yeah.
and the extension of this to those folks who want to make sure that they see the benefit and that we can communicate the benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so a couple things. On the survey piece, Kenzie and I are starting to work together a pretty comprehensive plan to get it out there. We were talking that email is probably one of the tools in our toolbox, not the only tool, right? So we'll use things like the newsletters. Kenzie likes to knock on doors. We've got good relationships with the housing managers, so we'll take advantage of those too and get some flyers and things in place. So we'll do everything that we can to get folks in front of the survey. And then the other piece of this program is to really ensure that these two ambassadors are really front and center of these residents. And so if we're doing that well, then I think we'll see the survey results kind of change. And then, Kenzie and I are talking to residents all the time about operations and safety and neighborhood engagement. So I think anecdotally we'll be able to pick up on whether or not, we're seeing it gain the traction that we think it is, and I think that will be really helpful for us to, depending on what we hear, we might be able to make some pivots quickly to sort of address some of those concerns, or we'll know that it's working, I think, rather quickly once we get it off the ground. So,
Thank you.
good questions. Yeah.
I was gonna, the survey is one piece of how we'll get feedback. I mean, as Melvin was talking about, they'll be front and center at meetings and in the buildings. The other thing I was gonna mention is that this built on a lot of the work that was done during the reauthorization. And I think this is something we've been hearing over the year, not just in the past couple months. And so I think it just sort of reflects where people are right now, and I think responds to what residents are telling us they want to see.
I think Pat had a question.
No, this comes from Grand Valley, just a two-pronged question about Blue Bridge.
Yeah.
And number one, and do I understand it correctly that the hours of the Blue Bridge closure are there just during enterprise, the 12 to 6 or whatever it is?
Yeah, we're gonna, we'll evaluate that going forward. We did work closely with the city, in response to the incident that occurred. Just, during our prize, we'll have it limited hours, and we'll evaluate it going forward to see if it needs to change.
Okay, and so that evaluation comes with the city input, with you?
Yeah, we worked really closely with the city and police department and others on that.
Okay. And the second part of the question is, it's designated, the Blue Bridge is designated as a social zone, correct?
It's part of the social district.
District,
Yes.
right.
It's a social district. And the question that I'm asking is there any chance of changing that?
That can certainly be amended at the city commission's discretion.
Okay, so we go to the commission?
Yeah, that'd be up to them.
Okay,
Yeah, the boundary can change.
thank you.
I did such a great job answering that question.
Very delicate.
Anything else?
More questions, comments? Good discussion. So we need a motion to,
Yes, so there's a recommendation in front of you to approve the expenditure of $124,160, which will pay for just a hair under 2 full-time ambassadors. We're going to make up the difference with the banked hours that we have. So we'll be adding 2 full-time ambassadors to the program. So the recommendation is to approve this fund to allow us to amend the contract with the ambassadors, with block by block rather, to add these 2 ambassadors to the program
for 1 year.
for 1 year. Yep. Not
This
in
was the
perpetuity.
budget. So this was in the budget that
Yep.
you all
It's a
approved.
line item in the budget,
Yep.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
And DGRI, the Board of Advisors, who actually holds the block-by-block contracts, approved the amendment contingent upon your.
On this approval. So
Yeah.
DGRI, once we approve it,
Yep,
it's ready to go.
yep.
That happened last week.
All right, any more questions, comments? Sound like you've done a lot of legwork, particularly with the resin, which is crucial.
I knew you
We
would
made a
have a lot
commitment
of
to it.
questions, so I thought I would just be really prepared.
We got to get this right
That's right.
as best we can. Pardon? Thank you. And a second, support? Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, the same? You got it.
Thank you,
Well
everybody.
done. Well, thanks. You put in a lot of work with these residents, so that's good. Got to get feedback.
Thanks to Kenzie as well.
Yeah.
Kenzie as well on our team, who's been great.
Thanks. All right. Good. Let's move on to, did reauthorization. Is that you?
This is probably all of us, right?
Yeah, I think we'll tee it up. I think Melvin has a few slides prepared that we'll walk through. This is generally just a reminder that because we've been doing the 1-year extensions, that we have to move
This
back
is
into it.
informing us that we need to get going.
We're gonna
again.
have to start it back over shortly. So, just want to remind everyone what that process looks like, some of the things we'll look at.
Good.
And see what comments, feedback, anything,
Okay.
any of you all have. So, Melvin.
It's our favorite
all
time
yours,
of the
man.
year.
Yeah.
Reauthorization time. Yeah, so I like to casually remind Tim this is my 4th reauthorization in the 3 years that I've been here. So just want to highlight some key changes from FY23, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So the big stuff. So nonprofit organization assessment, they were made non-voluntary, which was a big change from years past. They retained the reduced assessment rate of 60%. And then we estimated the revenue addition to be about $43,000, which according to the financials, we were pretty close. The next big piece was the residential assessment. So this was our first time assessing residents based on the state statute that changed. We assessed a $120 flat rate per residential property, generated about $74,000 in new revenue, and then we matched those funds with a $50,000 grant for the first year. And then in the general assessment, we increased that by 5%, strictly to cover costs of raising the ambassador wages. So for those of us that maybe need a reminder or weren't around, so we raised the ambassador wage from about $13-ish an hour to $16.50 base wage, and that was across the entire team, and then retroactively gave ambassadors that have been here for a while their raises back. So many of the ambassadors are making over $16.50. And we also added a week vacation time for all of the ambassadors as well, just to make the retention a little bit better for us and the position a little more attractive for folks to come in. And then on the snowmelt assessment, we reduced that by $10,000 to align that better with actual operational costs that we had sort of noticed and observed over the last couple of years. We've been really looking at the snowmelt, and we combined them the year before this, so they were one operational district so that we could gain some better efficiencies. And we've been working really close with Geotech to understand our costs going forward and to make sure that we're actually only generating the revenue we need to maintain and operate the systems annually. So this is kind of our timeline going forward, starting today in September, where we would be looking at trying to target this June for bills to go out instead. It works a little better for our budget to try to hit that. We had to make some changes this last go around to accommodate some changes that we were making. So that's why we kind of landed in September. But sort of this is sort of the timeline, the track that we're on, that we've been on for the last 3 re-auths that we've done. Not anything that we don't really know here, so no real big surprises. And then I think the big question is, what are our considerations for FY24? So on the assessment, what are our costs going to be? How is inflation going to impact that? Are there new services we need to investigate adding, or is there existing services we need to expand? What sort of term do we want to look at in reauthorizing this time? We've done 1 year for the last 3 years. Is it time to do multi-year? Is it still only 1 year? This is also the opportunity we can look at the service boundary and think about, is it time to add Monroe North, or at least explore that? Or are there other considerations about the boundary we need to make? And then the snowmelt is on there, but I'm not sure that we need to make a lot of changes for the snowmelt assessment. And then this is sort of the re-auth timeline once things have been approved, moving forward and getting bills out and things like that. And that's it.
Are you going to be suggesting we put together another reauthorization committee?
Yeah, that's
So
how
the
we've done it in
board
the
members?
past, is gathered some folks from inside the DID board and some other key stakeholders and put together a committee to kind of tackle all of these considerations and come up with an operating sort of plan and present it to the board here and get your feedback, and then make some changes based on that feedback, and eventually arrive at a final plan that we can recommend to City Commission. So if anybody would like to
When will we be
volunteer.
pulling that together?
We should probably be pulling that together in the next month. We should probably be kicking off a meeting sometime by mid to late October, I would say.
If anybody wants to volunteer,
Yeah.
they can let you know.
It's a great time. You've never had a better time than on a DID reauthorization.
I see
committee.
1, 2.
2, all right, Colin
look at
and
that.
Jessica, great.
You're probably going to have to take me, but
We'll take you, Bob.
hopefully it's my last one. Right. The legacy, yeah.
Yeah,
So, on the snow melt reduction, so this may be excuse my ignorance on this, but you're talking about maintenance. Is there an ability to basically save anything in a rainy day fund or a snowy day fund for that? Because it seems like in July, we heard a lot about the needs in snow melt moving forward, or projected needs in the future, so
yeah, so if you didn't hear him, the question is like, can we save money in sort of a rainy day fund for the snow melt? We have a fund balance.
Okay.
for that right now. That's in the financials. I don't know what statement that's on, Tisha. I'm sorry. Do you know?
It's actually on both.
It's on both. All right, fantastic.
Shows how close they are.
So yeah, there is sort of a rainy day fund that exists right now, and apologies, I didn't get it in time to get it out for this meeting. We will get it out soon. We requested from Geotech a pretty thorough assessment and analysis of the snowmelt, just to kind of gauge our operating costs for the next, I think it's 2 years is what we looked at, and then also we got an estimate on how much it will cost to replace it. So that's going to be fun to look at. So I have that. Tim and I are kicking that around internally, but we'll get that out to you as well. So we're all kind of operating on the same page as to where that snowmelt system is and what we need. Yeah.
Question on the snowmelt, is there any other new technology or something that's coming down the pipeline that we could invest in for when we do that? Or is this like Geotech's it, like that's what we have to do? Because he's scary when he talks about the cost.
He said to spray.
Yeah. So I think where we sort of struggle is our systems are 15 plus years old, and I mean, you all get the latest iPhones, you know, at a certain point, like technology supersedes what your old technology can do, and so I think we're not able to do a lot of more upgrading to our system. We're fortunate that Geotech, I mean, George Orphan, like, literally wrote the book on snowmelt. That guy's a genius. But we're really fortunate that he's the guy working on it, and the folks we work with, I mean, they do a great job taking care of it and making sure that we're making the right choices and getting the maintenance that we need to take care of. So I don't know that there's a lot more we can be doing. I think that's a really good question for the day that will come when we have to put in something new or not, or whatever we decide to do. Like, what sorts of technology exists now that may be able to help set us up better in the future with a new system or something like that. But I don't know that there's much more we can do to our current systems to make them more 21st-ish century.
Thanks.
So is there projecting in the future, what's the lifespan of the current system?
Well, I think we've exceeded the lifespan of the current system, so it's just sort of as we are able to maintain it and keep it in good functioning order. So that's, you know, just our ability to quickly respond to issues and maintain, and just generally maintain the system to a high degree is just good for us. So, and if people would stop digging into the ground and breaking it, that would go a long way also. That's probably our biggest hang up, is it gets damaged and we have to fix it. And those, when you fix it because it's been damaged, we all know it's never really the same. So that's one of the challenges too that we face.
Is that a big issue when third parties dig it up and then we pay for it?
No, we don't usually pay for it. It's usually all billed
charge
to
them back?
whoever damages it. It's all usually charged back to whoever
Okay,
damages
right.
it. So,
But that probably does happen a lot.
yeah, I think it happened twice this last summer, in fact, which is not uncommon.
So you're gonna distribute this update to us?
I have the plan, and now we'll make sure the board
And
gets it.
then
Yeah.
we can go talk about it at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we ought to digest it pretty well.
Yeah, I think Pat had a question, and then Peter.
So, Melvin, on that first slide, the $50,000 grant from DGRI,
Yeah.
is that ongoing?
That is part of an ongoing grant, but it is not, it's not going to be available in perpetuity.
Okay, so.
We looked at it as sort of a one-time deal.
Oh, that's too bad.
We'll have to look, I mean, we'll have to, as we dig into the numbers, we'll look at if it's possible to do it again. But I don't think we ever sold it as like it's gonna exist forever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to account for that 50,000 somewhere.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on how things go with the program this year.
Yep.
Remember, we do one-year budgets. We've been doing one-year budgets as well. So that's part of a conversation that'll happen for the FY '24 budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Melvin.
Yeah. Peter, you got a question?
She stole my question.
Great.
But I have another one.
Sure.
I am not directionally challenged, but what is Monroe North as a boundary?
Oh, sure. So Monroe North is
Monroe runs north and
is
south.
this here, this sort of section of downtown north of 196. So it's basically where the improvement district ends at the highway. It's the neighborhood that's north of the highway.
That's
So-
our current boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've analyzed that neighborhood a couple of times to understand
Yeah.
adding it to the improvement district and how that would change things. The last time we had a pretty in-depth analysis was prior to the resident and nonprofit change in assessment, and it didn't make financial sense for the DID to expand up there because Monroe North as a neighborhood couldn't support the services that it would need. It would actually dilute services in this area. So, however, we've had two pretty significant changes in how we assess, that being adding nonprofits to non-voluntary and then adding the resident piece. So that could change how the numbers in Monroe North work to be able to provide improvement district services beyond there. And I will say anecdotally, we have heard that there are at least residents and some businesses up there that are interested in having the improvement district. They want trash cans and ambassadors to empty them, basically. So it is something that we kind of keep kicking around and coming back to.
Follow on to that, they're a tax increment financing district, aren't they?
There is a small one, yeah.
Okay.
It wouldn't
But it
encompass
doesn't
the
cover
whole
the entire
neighborhood.
No,
area?
it's a small area. It's essentially 6th Street Bridge up to
Will that
Colebrook.
stay in place if they were to, okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, they can overlap.
Okay, good question, yeah. All right, any other questions? We got work to do starting here in another month on.
Yeah. And I know we've got Jessica and Cullen and Bob, of course. If anybody else is interested, let Tim or I know. We would happily bring you along on our reauthorization
Yeah,
journey.
You get a little in-depth, you get to kind of figure out what's going on, yeah. It's interesting.
Oh, I have to, it was like,
Usually monthly meeting.
yeah, it's usually monthly and then board meetings to go along with that, yeah.
There may be a period where we have to do a little more frequent, but bi-weekly most.
Yeah.
It'll trail off.
And the authorization committee's work kind of comes on the front end, so we have to get, basically it's for us to get the plan ready to bring to the board to approve, and then that sort of ends the reauthorizations committee's commitment, and then we have a lot of work to do to get it through city commission, but the reauthorization committee is sort of done at that point.
And it, you can take it, the committee members could take it clear to the end of getting it through the city commission meetings and the public hearings. and
That's
all
true,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. I typically go to those along with Tim and Melvin, but
Yeah, you're welcome to attend.
this year was especially interesting because it was when all of the upheaval was going on.
Yeah.
We got kind of buried into it was tough, yeah. But that's always an interesting process, committee meetings and meetings of the whole and, yeah, so. All right, onward and upward, right. Probably the biggest decision is boundaries, and we can do a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year assessment.
Yeah.
Because you do it beyond 1 year, it has implications.
As everyone knows, costs continue to
Right.
go up. So
Thanks,
I think those are
everybody.
the big ones.
And you can't do it on a variable budget. You can't say cost, or we're gonna increase it year to year based on inflation. It's gotta be a fixed amount ahead of time.
Yes.
Right, those are all issues to be, right.
Josh.
Yeah.
Sure.
How much does the DDA boundary?
Different than DID boundary.
Do you have a zoomed out map? The DDA boundary
Offhand.
is quite a bit bigger, so DDA goes all the way up to Leonard.
Oh, it does go up.
Yeah, and then comes down front, and then Wealthy, and it has some portions south of Wealthy.
My thoughts are if it's not covered.
That should, I know it's not a DID thing, but having those corridors covered as development occurs is helpful because those DDA liquor licenses
Yep.
become available.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal
Yeah.
for new business owners to be able to get those.
The DDA is quite a bit bigger.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on the reauthorization? We're moving along, launched. All right, next is, Tim, you're gonna give us a little update?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of highlights. First, wanted to just call out the vitals report, which we continue to add into the packet and is getting honed in. Thanks to Marion and Bill and everyone else on the team for doing that. A couple of highlights in that. One is visitor traffic continues to pick up. Obviously, our prize is a big help for that, but we're tracking above our 5-year average overall. So visitor foot traffic is still really strong. And then hotel occupancy reached this month for the first time went above the 5-year average as well. So we're starting to see people come back, which is great for everyone. On the project side, a couple of things I wanted to highlight. I think most people are aware, but if not, the river, so the river revitalization is open for public comment right now, and they're accepting comments. I know we've all been talking about it for a long time, but the more support we can offer, the better. And there are a couple of opportunities to do that. You can do it virtually at any point, and we can send out a link to that, but there is a public hearing on the 10th of October as well that you can participate in. There is one tonight as well, yeah.
They're doing another public hearing on the 10th?
I think there was another. Maybe it's open till the 10th. It's open until the 10th.
Online
Yeah.
until the 10th.
That's right. Related to that, Lions Square, which we've talked about a lot, moved into, the application was deemed administratively complete, so that was another step in that process, and we're waiting to understand from Eagle, which is the permitting agency, what the next phase of that is, but we're at least now in the process of getting a permit for that as well. So 2 projects that have been long underway, but that are moving forward. And then lastly, on the project front, wanted to highlight our Van Andel Arena alley redesign, which we've been working through, was awarded and for those of you that don't know, that's reconstruction, redesign of that alley between Fulton and Oaks, leading into the Piazza at Studio Park. That was awarded a state grant for $800,000 that'll go towards construction. So we have quite a few projects that we've been working on for a while moving forward. And Mark Miller on our team, who's over in the gallery, has been helping to lead those for us. So good news all around. And then just a few event highlights. We have our futsal courts. Does everyone know what futsal is? I assume not. It's essentially small-sided soccer, smaller ball, 5-on-5. The DDA approved sort of turning the surface parking lot, a part of the surface parking lot over on Seward, adding 3 futsal courts over there. So those will be open. We're gonna have an event next weekend on the 8th that we hope you can come out for. We expect those will be a big draw, and we're happy to have them open for the fall. We're a little unsure if they'd be ready for the end of the year, but those are moving along. So big event on that next week, and then a few other things going on. One is the Grand Rapids Griffins open play again this month, so that'll be good to see more people downtown. And then the marathon also takes place a week from this Sunday. So a lot of activity going on. Just a few highlights on the event front. Otherwise, happy to take any questions.
So you talked about the increased activity and the occupancy. The first economic club meeting this year, we had over 450. And the second one, which is Monday, they're going to be just shy of, right now, they're just shy of 500 signed up. Those are record numbers. And we've had some big years at Econ Club. 400 is a good number. And there's a lot of good, well, they're good speakers, but seems to be a lot of interest for people to want to go, get back and see people again. So that's really good to see. So.
One other event for the end of the month as we move into Halloween, we do have a giant pumpkin carving scheduled for October 28th. So if you want to see a guy...
Artistic people?
Yeah, so if you want to see a guy with a chainsaw hack up a 500-pound pumpkin, yeah, come on down. That'll be at Rosa Parks. Right. Yes, he's a professional.
All right, thank you. Public comment? Any public comment? Yes, sir?
Hal Furden on the DNN board. Couple of questions.
Okay, you want to come up here so we can all hear you?
Sure.
Yeah, I have trouble hearing anyway.
Hal Furden on the DNN board. I have a couple of questions. One, what can this group do to ensure that building owners maintain their sidewalks?
The building owners maintain the sidewalk?
There are pieces missing, and building owners don't seem to want to do that. It's not a city's issue.
Jessica or Tim, you can probably help, but my understanding, our job is to not maintain them. We will clean over and above what the city does and wash graffiti off.
Right.
But if they're crumbling and broken, whatnot, that's the property owner's responsibility. And the city,
That wouldn't be the jurisdiction of this board in particular, aside from the efforts that Bob has described.
Since this board collects from building owners, is there any pressure that can be put on building owners to do what is right and fix sidewalks?
Well, the fixing, if they're broken and crumbled, I think is a city enforcement department supposed to be on that. Do you have specific sites?
Yeah, if you can notify some, if you have lists, I mean, we can follow up on that.
Yeah.
Yep, the other is Bert doing any coordination with the hot team on the homeless issue downtown, especially the overnight? I know they're not allowed to stay overnight in parks, city ordinance, you can't, but is this group doing anything to help in that with the hot team?
We can talk offline on that, but yeah,
Okay.
we do. Yeah, our ambassador team does that.
Okay.
Coordinates with the hot team.
Thank you. Good questions. All right, any other?
Sure, I'll speak. Hi, everyone, I'm Kathy Steinberg, and I live right on the Mill Center.
You'll come up here so we
First
can all.
Community Bank Building. And
Okay.
I've been living downtown for 18 years. And so I just want to first publicly thank Kenzie for affording me the opportunity to be part of the resident assessments subcommittee. And then I also want to say that I appreciate that there will be a survey to determine the success or the progress of this pilot program, particularly because people have approached me and have expressed their displeasure about being assessed. And so by being able to gather information to show that there has been a positive outcome will be really helpful to respond to residents. And so I want to thank you for the plans to have such a survey done. Thanks.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
That emphasizes we need to have a good survey and we need to get good feedback.
No
Right.
pressure.
Right. Thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else? All right. Any board comment, discussion for good of the order? I'm going around the room. Huh? Anybody else got any comments, questions, input? All right. Hearing none, thank you all. Appreciate all your attendance and consciousness in trying to help get us along and make us better. So with that, meeting adjourned. Ahead of time.